Kelsey Taylor. I am an Enneagram coach, as Jake mentioned. Enneagram is a Greek word meaning 9 points or 9 drawing, and it is an ancient personality typing system that teaches 9 ways of seeing and being in the world, 9 different types.
Awesome. And this is currently a aspiration to be a full-time gig for you, right?
It is, yeah. Right now it's my side hustle, and so I've had a lot of fun. It got started really with a friend saying, "You know so much, could you come do this team training?" And so I thought, well, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And then another friend said, "Hey, we'd love to have you come do this for our team." And so then I got to thinking, like, there may be something here. And so the rest is history.
I like the Enneagram. I think that almost everyone does. I think it's fun to know your number, to talk about your number. Everyone loves to hear about themselves.
Absolutely.
I think for the most part. I mean, maybe there's a number that doesn't. I don't know, but you know, like you go to the Enneagram stuff and you're like, oh, tell me about me. Let me read about me, right?
Exactly.
You know, whatever
Yes.
in there.
Yes.
And so I get it that there's like a draw to it. I feel like it's maybe gaining in popularity. I don't know if that's just my experience.
Yeah, it is very trendy.
Yeah, it's kind of a trendy thing to do. But there's also like a realness to it. And so what does that look like? Like what, you said there were some personal testimonies. What's that like?
Yeah, so I found the Enneagram in a season where I was experiencing extreme burnout working as a kids pastor.
Okay.
And that seemed to be a recurring theme in my life. I didn't recognize that theme until later, but I was in this season and I was constantly like pouring out, and I didn't feel like I was doing enough. I didn't feel like I was helping enough. I didn't feel like I had enough of the right answers to help grant peace to the people in the community I was serving, the kids, the volunteers, parents alike. And so when the Enneagram found me, it was such a huge blessing because it helped me realize that as an Enneagram 1, I really have a hard time with certain boundaries and with rest. And when you pair those two things together, it creates this beautiful opportunity to love and care for people in a way that is good and just. But the flip side of that, if you're not able to turn that off, it is burnout. And we all do that to a certain extent or to a certain capacity. We all have the ability to experience burnout, but it's unique to ones in the way that they listen to their inner critic and they believe that their inner critic is a friend, and so they are constantly thinking like, I should have done this, I should have done that, instead of saying, well, I could have. And so I've learned to switch my shoulds to coulds. I should do this. Well, wait a second, I could do this. Do I actually have capacity to? Like, this friend of mine is going through a hard time. I should take them dinner or buy their groceries for a month, or all well-meaning, really good things. However, if I don't have the budget to buy their groceries, I would still do it. So
Gotcha.
It is like transitioning this should to I could do that, or what are some other things that I could do? And then you bring in this element of curiosity to your situations, and you come up with better solutions than your first initial, I think, solution. And so the Enneagram has just been helpful to relieve me from this burden that I think anybody can, but type 1s especially can put on themselves to be what they deem as perfect. And when we can bring that element of grace, self-compassion, and empathy and curiosity, we really do kind of let ourselves experience freedom in a new way, and we see the box that we sometimes put ourselves in, and then we can get out of that box.
That's an awesome, like, tangible piece that, like, I saw all these shoulds and I switched them to coulds, and I would imagine that switches, like you're saying, the emotion that you're feeling from obligation to curiosity, or maybe even obligation to inspiration, or to whatever of what's going to go next. So you were experiencing a lot of burnout, and then how did you not feel burnout? Like, so you switched your shoulds to coulds. Did you like stop doing things?
Good question. I still feel burnout on a regular basis, but it's a cue now for me.
Gotcha.
When I do feel burnout, that's my red flag to say you're doing more than you need to. And I would say to kind of pull this back into a gospel perspective, if Christ yoke is easy and Christ's burden is light, and I'm experiencing something in life that is not easy or light, I'm likely doing something God never asked me to do. And so when I experience those seasons of burnout, that is my red flag to say, what are you doing that God just never asked you to? What are you doing that nobody ever asked you to? Maybe your inner critic is driving you, and it's not producing healthy or good results for you or for the people that you work with, live with, have relationships with. So I have learned when I feel burnout, ideally you can prevent it, and there are some ways to do that ahead of time. Like you can be preventative in what you're signing up for, saying yes to, or taking on. So there are measures there. One of my best ones is saying yes. I had a friend tell me, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no.
Right.
So I thought that was good. But really, if it is not something that you do have margin for, that is bringing you joy, that you have capacity for, you need to work on that boundary of saying no, but thank you for thinking of me. And no is a full sentence. And I think for some of us, that can be very challenging. For others, not so much. But for some, it can be very challenging to just say no, period, full stop. It feels very selfish or rude.
What number is that hardest for? Do you know, to say no, full stop? Twos?
I think twos.
That's a kind of people pleasing.
Absolutely. I think sevens also have a hard time saying no, and I think nines.
Oh yeah. No, I could see that. I am a 7.
Yes.
And my no would be hard for missing out.
Right.
Not for like, it's not so much of people pleasing, but I'm like, well, I don't want to miss. If I say no, then what am I missing?
I'm saying no to fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this could be awesome. I don't want to be the one that missed. So the shoulds and the inner critic being a friend is a characteristic of a 1. You learned a technique to sort of come around that, to overcome that obstacle, but you're still a 1.
Right, absolutely.
And so how does that work? How do you do that, but you don't change your number?
Yes, so you're born your type. What does change, I think, is your self-awareness. Absolutely. And your life circumstances change. And so what I love about the Enneagram is that it's not just you're a 1. We all embody all 9 types. It is just one core motivation that we tend to go back to on a regular basis, or more often than the others. It's that one habitual or subconscious place we go. And for me, that motivation is to be right and accurate as a 1.
I think a misconception that I had early on, and that I see in other people, that the numbers are telling you how you're going to be. And what I'm hearing is that, you know, in our coaching, we talk about all the time that you've got a way that you perceive the world that causes emotions that results in actions. And oftentimes the actions are the lagging indicator of what that's where you see it first.
Yes.
And you can kind of go back and address the root cause, but you're saying that your Enneagram type, it kind of gives you a bit of a framework, or like a fencing around what you can expect your default motivation to be.
Correct.
That's going to go up, and like, this is kind of how I see things. And so yes, I do end up doing these, but it doesn't, I'm not obligated to them.
It's not exclusive.
Yeah, because I do have authority still in what I choose to believe, just like anybody else does.
Exactly. And there's some complexity to the Enneagram that I think really matches the complexity of our human nature. With most personality types, you get like the disc profile. Oh, I'm high D, high I. And there's so much goodness that comes from knowing those things and self-awareness. But the Enneagram really does. There's this horizontal level of, as a type 1, here are the things that I can learn about the traditional type 1. But there's also this vertical level of it that says there are 9 different stages of development. And so when we look at your unhealthy stages, your healthy, and your average stages, there's nuance there. And even beyond that, there's nuance in the wings that are either number to the left and right. And you can borrow, as a 7, you can borrow some from your 6 wing, and you can borrow some traits from your 8 wing. Just to kind of peek behind the curtain, there is more complexity than just being a 7.
These list of the 4 things I tend to do.
Yes.
There's more to the Enneagram than that.
Absolutely, yes.
What you're describing is that you are a 1, but there aren't specific behaviors of a 1. You wouldn't ever look at someone's behaviors and be able to say that's what you are, because who knows where they are in their process of growing or health in that area.
Yes, I think it is totally okay to guess, and I do this in all of my trainings. I guess what type my kids are because it helps me as a parent. I think we have a type 7 and I think we have a type 1. And so when I can hold that with an open hand, now I don't know because I don't see the motivation that you're talking about. I only see behaviors. And we can sometimes incorrectly associate behaviors with a type.
Right.
Like somebody who runs a marathon, we might say, oh, they've got to be a 3. They might be, but they might also be a 1 and they're trying to fix their health or they're trying to improve themselves. It could be that they're a 7 and they just had this bucket list item that they wanted to run a marathon. Like you don't see the motivations that go on. You only see behaviors. And so I think it's totally okay to guess. Like I parent my 7-year-old differently than I would parent my 1-year-old. And again, I have an open hand with that. I don't know their types, but when my 6-year-old son Trent, who we think may be a 1, is hard on himself, I have some language, I have some experience, especially being a 1. I'm like, man, I think your inner critic is being really loud right now. He will get upset and think that he's supposed to somehow have mastered the skill of drawing and he wants to be an artist in a minute. Like he'll watch a YouTube video and he's like, I can make it just like that. So there's some unrealistic expectations and then he internalizes that and he thinks I am therefore a bad kid or I'm a bad drawer or I'm a bad whatever it is. And so there's space there. My other son, who's 4, I have learned we have to do something fun before we do chores because maybe as a 7, we don't know. He will not want to do chores initially. It is not a fun experience. It's pulling teeth. If we do something fun together, he makes chores fun. And so I've learned with my oldest, he can do chores first and he's fine. With my youngest, not so much. We need to implement some of that fun. And knowing that about the people you work with, the people you're married with, or the people that you raise, it changes everything. And I think can sometimes help alleviate some tension or friction we would otherwise experience.
The classic that you hear about a number 1 is they always think they're right.
Yes.
And
that's true.
I'm always curious because I'm like, well, I think everyone always likes to be right though.
Yes.
And so you kind of wonder what is that, but it's what's motivating it, you know, because you could see someone argue beyond what seems where it's like, hey, this is breaking out of social norms. They're so convinced at being right. And they could be a 6 who is feeling fear about, you know, they're feeling unsafe unless they can control this and be understood, you know. So like I really like this like kind of layer underneath that it's not the actions are never going to tell you, and that even you as an expert are like, I'm guessing what my own children are because, you know, like we say all the time, only God knows our heart.
Exactly.
And if we're talking about core motivation,
we don't know.
Yeah, it's tough to sort that out.
Yeah, that was really well said. That's a good example.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I know you helped me a ton with this, even just when we were just like kind of bantering about this, like, hey, we're going to do this thing and trust you. And I noticed that I like to think of myself like I don't have a ton of fear. I don't mind doing things where I could be rejected or made fun of or pointed at. I don't mind that so much. However, I've noticed that if I'm not paying attention, my life may not go the way I want to go. I may limit opportunities for myself because I am afraid they'll be boring. And I really can constrict. I mean, even something like when Whit and I were first talking about having Maverick. And people are like, oh, is that scary to you? And I'm like, no, it's not scary the way you think it's scary, but I am terrified I'll be bored. You know, I'm like, I think about the time, like my time with Maverick. And so, but when you know that, I can say, okay, I'm feeling, you know, some emotion that I don't want to have about this. How can I add fun to what I'm doing? And if I just ask myself that question, how could I add fun? How could I add fun? It fixes everything.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's so good. For 7s, a lot of them would say, no, I'm not particularly afraid, or I don't fear. Maybe there's some anxiety, but that's usually if they have a stronger 6 wing. And so they'll pull that anxiety from the 6 side a little bit. But to hear you say like, oh yeah, there is something that I'm afraid of. It's being bored.
Yeah, and it's real. Like I make, you know, if you think about when someone is afraid, they make decisions that kind of don't make logical sense.
Right.
And if I look back to where I've done that, it was absolutely a fear of something being like mundane or ordinary or boring or tedious.
Yes.
And I also know that you and I have a huge similarity in that we are in industries, self-help, that can sometimes be looked at with a little bit of side eye from a Christian community.
Yeah.
And so how's that worked out for you to have the Enneagram and your faith meet?
Yes. Well, I think a lot of times people can look at the Enneagram and think this is the thing that will solve all of my problems.
First of all, it sounds like pentagram.
It does.
So already you're like, oh no,
Hesitation.
Enneagram, that thing that they put on the floor with the candles? No, thank you.
I'm out. Yes, there's a lot of hesitancy around things that we're not as familiar with, and I think that comes from a really good place. That's the part of our brain that says not familiar, not safe.
Right.
And once we learn the history behind things, or once we're exposed in I think healthy doses, we begin to become more trusting. And so I think that has been helpful. Trendy Enneagram has helped expose people to where they don't feel as hesitant. So there's part of that. I think second part is there's this fear sometimes that if I look for comfort or help or wisdom outside of prayer or outside of reading my Bible, I'm not a good Christian.
Right.
Or I'm not.
It's
or I'm
idolatry.
being unfaithful.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But I think God has given us community to. I mean, Proverbs 27:17 is iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I think at the heart of it, community helps with that. There are a lot of gifts that we have. The Holy Spirit is active in each brother and sister in Christ in different ways and in different capacities. And teaching is one of those gifts. And so I think our method doesn't really matter so much as I think sometimes there's some hesitancy there. What I mean is I'm teaching empathy, I'm teaching self-awareness.
Yes.
But I'm teaching it through the lens of like, at the end of the day, the Enneagram can only do so much. It cannot fix your sin. Only Christ can do that. There is only one answer for sin, and there's only one place to go for that. How we recognize our sin, Enneagram can totally help you with that.
Okay.
And bring some
like
really good awareness. For me, anger is a sin. And it's what we do with that anger that matters. It's not feeling anger, that's the sin. It's what we do with it. For sevens, their core sin, so to speak, would be gluttony. It is this need to have all that life has to offer, all of life experiences, and so there's this reaching all the time instead of just resting in what we already have as sevens, and being able to say contentment comes from wanting what I have, not having what I want. That's really hard for sevens. It doesn't come naturally, and so when you learn about the Enneagram, you can learn to find contentment in Christ. And so it is a tool to better, I think, connect you with God. There's a lot of mystic traditions like centering prayer that teaches us to just be, not be human doings, but be human beings.
Right.
And so I've really appreciated that the opportunity to grow in my prayer time because I have been exposed to the Enneagram.
And so the Enneagram for you, it's not a solution. It's an awareness. It's revealing, not solving.
Yeah.
And so you don't get caught up with like, well, let me look to the Enneagram to solve this problem.
Yes.
It's just, it reveals.
Yes. So if you break your arm, I'm going to take you to the doctor. The doctor's going to take an x-ray, and the Enneagram is the x-ray.
Yeah.
Where is your arm broken? And then the doctor's going to fix it. The doctor in this, metaphor is obviously God. But the Enneagram just shows you what's broken and what needs to be addressed and how to learn to show up authentically in life.
Is there ever a time when you're reading scripture and you're like, that's the Enneagram, it's there, right there?
Man, yes. There. I can't help but guess when I read certain people's responses. I'm like, man, I wonder, because Peter ebbs and flows between confidence and self-doubt, which is very consistent with sixes. And of course, we don't know.
Right, no, for sure, yeah.
But we do see this, like, I love you so much, Lord, I would be willing to die for you. And then the next moment, it's like, Jesus who? I don't know.
Right.
So there's confidence, and then there's self-doubt. And I see the way that Paul teaches. I'm like, could you be a one? Because there's some harshness sometimes that I pick up on. But also, I think when we see scriptures like love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. So we can use our intellect, which 5, 6s, and 7s do. We could use our emotions and our heart to make sense of things, which 2s, 3s, and 4s do. And then we can use our gut, our like, man, that just didn't feel right in my gut. We can use that, and that's what 8s, 9s, and 1s typically do. Again, you can use all 3, but usually there's one that's a little bit more prominent than the other.
The way that, even as you're describing it, I can hear the Enneagram coming in there, is that it seems like a lot of times in the scripture, there's this conflict between Jesus and his followers, and then the way that it is, Pharisees, Sadducees, whatever it is. And in this conflict, they're always trying to point at action. And they're like, but you didn't do. But what did you do? Do something so that we can feel this way. You know what I mean? And then Jesus is always saying, like, no, you don't have the right motivation, and so you're not gonna see. And I think that if we take that and say that the Enneagram is a tool to reveal motivation.
Yes, I think that's such a good connection point to make. Like in the Old Testament, we have all these laws, which make sense to the Israelite people who were learning who God was after being, in slavery for 400 years and being exposed to all these Egyptian gods. Then you have this, like, God saying, like, no, I'm the one true God. And these are ways that I'm going to have you set apart so that people know I'm different than all of the other, ancient gods that existed, that other I think, communities at the time, for lack of a better word, believed in or put their faith in, or other regions. I do get where people look at that and think, like, these are the laws, and this is how I should follow them. Stuff, yeah. Exactly. Especially as a one who is very concerned with what are the rules. And it
says not only should, but shalt.
Yes.
That's
clear.
Like should times 3.
Yes, at least. Yes. So I can see where we have these elite Sadducees or Pharisees that have been trained in the laws of the Torah and think like I'm doing all of the right things. I think that really can get Christians in a bind sometimes to think like, if I do all the right things, then but that's not the gospel. There's no if then. It is I love you because I love you, and I want good things for you, and here are some examples of some good things that you can do, and I've prepared good works for you, and I would like for you to participate in this kingdom that we have here on heaven now. Yeah, I want to do the right things, and Jesus comes in, and we see that completely, as you said, turned upside down. It's not about doing the right things, it's about your heart, it's about your motivation, it's about your thoughts, it's about how you're approaching it. And you could pray all the right prayers, but if your heart is not in it, then doing is kind of meaningless.
I bet you could even see it because you figured the only person that knew everyone's number was Jesus.
Absolutely.
And so if you look at the way he responds to people,
yes, he's
probably responding perfectly for their number.
That makes me so happy.
I bet you could determine some people's numbers by seeing how Jesus, that would only be the perfect response if that person was a 3. I know that he knows, so it must be that.
Yes.
So with all of this, I love it. Seeing this, it's just a means to stir up awareness of who we are at our core, not what we are obligated to do. So if someone watches this and they just want to take away just 2 things that they could kind of do with their knowledge of either what number they are or what number someone they love is, something like that. What's like just a tool that someone could take away? Yeah,
I would say take 5 minutes for the next 7 days and just reflect on your habits and record that, and then don't do anything, just reflect. Here are some of the things that I did today. They could be good, they can be frustrating, whatever you want to record. Just start journaling 5 minutes.
Okay.
For the Enneagram ones out there, there's no right or wrong way to do this.
How do I get an A on this assignment?
And for the 4s and 7s who are not like the,
I'm already sitting still
fun,
and writing.
Yes. Put some music on, make it fun,
Perfect.
get in a fun space, and then time yourself. Even it doesn't have to be 5, but at least write some things down. And so after 7 days, I want you to reflect, and I want you to start asking, why did I make these choices? And so you're going to start building some self-awareness around that. Like, what do I like the results that these gave me? And if I do, great, keep doing those. But if you say, I don't really like the results that some of these choices brought on, ask why. Why don't you like them? Why did you make those decisions? And start bringing awareness to some of the things that are a little more automatic, or maybe not brought to a conscious level just yet.
Yeah, I love it. And even, did I like the experience of doing it?
Yes. Why or why not?
Well, yeah, why would I keep doing something if I didn't like it?
Yes.
And, you know, if it's, just because it's giving the result. I love it. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. The second tip I think for other people is just ask good questions. People really do, they love to talk about themselves. And so if you can be a good listener and you can be curious, it makes conversation really fun, I think. And so the next time somebody rubs you the wrong way, just get curious. Just say like, oh, tell me more about that. Or here's how I would imagine that situation. What do you think? Like, just ask some really good questions, but be genuinely curious, not leading questions, curious questions.
Trying to understand the motivation behind what they're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I have actually experienced transformation from your coaching. Even just like side, it's never even been like official. It's always just been in the, the container of a friendship or colleagues kind of trying to work on a project together.
Likewise,
And so if other people want that, like I recommend it. Like, what's the most fun way to get in touch with you?
Most fun is probably Instagram.
I agree. You got to see the reels. They're
so fun. I have.
You're really good at it.
Oh, thank you. It's probably my perfectionistic tendencies coming out. But
oh yeah, because you probably redo them until your mouth matches
100%.
the words.
Absolutely do. I'm like, nope, that's trash. We're gonna do it again.
But it does make it entertaining to watch when you do it like that.
They're a lot of fun. It brings in my type 4, I think, that creative side that sometimes I can neglect. So it's fun. Instagram's a fun place to get.
And Instagram is at the Enneagram, the Working Enneagram.
Yeah,
at the Working Enneagram.
Yeah, good memory.
Well, I gotta watch the reels. I gotta.
Yes, at the Working Enneagram. There's also, I have a website, Valley Point Coaching, that gives some information on individual coaching and team trainings, and so you could reach me. Both of those are good places.
And right now, I know you do a lot of team trainings. Do you work with individuals?
I do one-on-one coachings. It's 30-minute sessions on Zoom, and it is either topical or situational. And what I mean by that is, topical is we're going to do a deep dive on your Enneagram type. So as a 7, we're going to talk about your core motivations. We're going to talk about your wings. We're going to talk about your intelligence centers. We're going to talk about your communication style. How as a 7, you do talk in stories, and so sometimes other people may lose what you're trying to communicate if you're giving feedback, because you're so flowery with your examples
or analogies. I cannot speak without analogy. I can't do it.
Which is a really good thing for 7s. It's a gift. But if you're trying to teach and you're trying to correct, sometimes that can get lost in translation. What you're communicating is, I don't want that to happen to you, but what they're hearing is a story, and you're like, man, what a cool story they just shared with me. And they don't take what you're really maybe trying to say.
I'm getting coached right now. You see how I do that?
So that's communication style, and then conflict style. And then there's some situations that come up in life, like I am experiencing some tension with my spouse or my partner or my adult children, my boss, some situations there. I have lost a loved one. I've lost a pet, a cat, a dog.
Life change.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, we'll make sure all those links are on everything so that people can see it, and we'll share this everywhere and make sure everyone that needs your help gets it.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to have you. So thank you for having me.
All right. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Ask Steadfast. Whit and I are super excited to use this avenue to sort of spread our message. And so it would mean a ton to us if you'd subscribe to this channel. Additionally, if you have any questions you'd like to see addressed in future episodes, whether serious or funny, we'd love to see those in the comments. So leave that in the comment below, and we'll see you in the next one.